production needs. I'm making this up, but I'm just saying, you know, what are those needs? Where is our makeup? You know, how do we get the you know, the specialized, I don't know, prosthetics or whatnot, and where the state. For us, we can't necessarily say, here's the list of the things we don't have, because there will be someone somewhere in the state that calls me and say, how dare you ignore my business, right? You know, I mean, we can't make that decision of what someone is and isn't doing. There's no way for us to determine that, you know. We can only say, hey, these are the people we know are doing this. These are the people that are, you know, generally, they have a lot of credits in the business. Do your own due diligence. John, as you were saying, yes, if you can inject more of your opinion into it, then the state can, you know, ultimately. So if I can't say we don't have something because I may not know that's true, or I may not know someone's working to be involved in that, or say, hey, wait, I could do that. So it's a little different, it's a different parameters, a different way of looking at it. But what our job is to provide the resources. We're supposed to, you know, we're supposed to say, this is what we have in New Mexico. So we have to know what we have in New Mexico. And yes, there's certain props, you know, I hear about a lot. And a lot of it is, you know, certain costumes are not easy to get when they want it. So I can say generally sometimes those departments, depending on what it is and what they're asking for, are maybe a little harder to find. You know, I don't know how many crew members that we have now, but at one point we only had 2 crew members that dealt with wigs, for instance, right? And the weird thing is, I'm so involved in my job, I swear I was dreaming about that last night. I was dreaming about mustaches and how, like, mustaches and film. It was just a weird, you know, I was like, maybe I need to, you know, take a break, go out to lunch, I don't know. But the point being is that you have to be able to point to, for us, you have to be able to point to something or someone. We'll say, hey, you know, here's a bunch of set decorators that probably have a better idea what's going on, because it is the people out there doing the buyers.
I would definitely say that. I would say creating a list of set decorators or buyers, the people that make buying decisions, and having that available to vendors. I like getting calls from vendors and saying, hey, I've got this, or maybe dropping me an email every now and again saying, you know, I'm involved in this kind of business, and I'm just putting my name out, or reminding us, because well, hey, why not? I mean, if you have a solution to an immediate problem that I'm gonna pick up the phone and use it. So you know, having that list available to people, I think is good.
Correct. I'm sorry, really just on that note, John. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do this at our office. I say if you have a new business and you know, and it's I don't know, let's say it's where to buy gifts or something, travel, things like that. I say, you know, make sure you know who the POCs are, for instance. So who's the person making the buying decision based on your what you're looking to do. And I say, go to our directory, our crew side. We have support services. We have our crew directory. I say, you know, and maybe, you know, call the union or use, you know, most of the union members are listed in our directory. So you could say, don't bother them all the time, but let them know that you're there, because I know a lot of crew member, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, they have that kind of, I'll call it the problem solution box of lists of vendors of what, that POC have made no idea what that producer's going to ask her or him, and then you go into that file and say, oh, here's that vendor that emailed me that one time, I wonder if they're still start doing that, and they're going through that list till they find that problem solved.
I like that too. You know, as a department head, I like that too, and particularly in Santa Fe because it's just a smaller market. Yeah, always
I think direct marketing to customers is a great way to go. We're a small industry. There's only a few. Sorry.
I can hear you, sir.
There's only a few decision buying people. I mean, when I say a few, a couple of hundred maybe. But you know, each. And I mean, if I'm getting a phone call from a container guy and I don't need containers, I'm going to pass them on to locations or construction or someone else. You know, so I'm not. you're not going to get your call will be answered. That's what I'm saying.
I'm going to make a pitch for an on-air film festival, and that one of the things that, right behind here, we have a list of our sponsors, and what we've got to be careful of in the business, those of us who make buying decisions, is that we are conscious of those who support us. In fact, Frank and I were just having this site conversation over here. We don't need to have a site conversation, but we're just talking about it. But those who support us, particularly through the legislative process and everything else that we do, but who support things like the tune-up and that sort of things, and we've got to make a point of pushing this out. And one of the things that Toby and I were discussing when we come in is how do we differentiate between a local business, and that's tough. That's really tough because there's laws around what's rebatable and what's not, and this basically, I'm not going down that path. I'm not getting into the weeds of this because Toby deals with this every day. I don't know why. I don't know how you dream. You should be having nightmares. It is tough. But we can make that subjective decision is that if somebody is a local and they do something like sponsor a film festival, then our people should be aware of it. I mean, because as Edward said, there's only a couple hundred people, but these couple of hundred people are making buying decisions which are well in excess of $100 million. I mean, they're buying a lot of stuff. And we know that because we know from the Film Office website, which is a great place to go, by the way. They have not individual pictures, but they have the categories there of what people on crew, on actors, and what they spend on hotel rooms and that sort of thing. They have a pretty robust reporting requirement, so you know the aggregates of where the money's going. The people that you see bought $50 million worth of stuff are represented people, because everybody's represented. The producer's represented. By representative, I mean the union. That's just, we say represented because we don't use the U word. But they're represented people. They're IA, or their Producers Guild, or their Directors Guild, or there's something. They're represented people, and they're making these buying decisions. Now, one of the ongoing discussions that we need to have, I think, tell me if I'm wrong on this, maybe just we shouldn't be involved in, but I think one of the ongoing discussions that we need to have from the unions, from the represented people, to from the people who work under the union contract, to the governmental authorities, to the state, you know, to Santa Fe Economic Development. I mean, I hate to keep coming back to this, but I think that this is all about economic development, because if you build a business model and tax incentives, your business model is a bad business model. You should never build your entire business model based around tax incentives, because tax incentives are sort of like quarterbacks. They all grow old, and you get tired of them eventually. No matter how good they are, you know, just eventually you're going to have to get a new quarterback, and to drive the business, and tax incentives will go away. They always do. And I think the New Mexico tax incentives are probably as firm as any tax incentives in this country, just because the way they were written. You have to take them out of the law, and you don't have to come back and redo them every, you know, like you just lost the tax incentives in Carolina because they sunset, and there's no will to redo them. In New Mexico, we don't sunset, so you don't have to redo them on a regular basis. So we have pretty strong tax incentives. So it doesn't mean in 4 years, in 8 years' time, you know, that Governor Egolf is not going to say, or Governor Gonzales is not going to say, well, Governor Gonzales will, you know, Governor Egolf won't. But some governor, some future governor, want to say that you know, this is, they want to go in a different direction. You know what happened in Nevada? They decided they fell in love with Tesla more than we love Tesla. We love Tesla a lot, but they really, really love Tesla in Nevada. And to get the money to get Tesla to build a plant in Reno, they took $70 million out of the film incentives. So they just took it away. And the film people are like, wait, you love us too. Well, no, we love you, but we really, really love Tesla. And if something else comes along that say that they love us more in the film business, then they'll take the money. There's only a finite pool of money and it'll be gone away. So the developing whatever you do in a post-incentive world is something that's important, and I think that's something that I frankly, I get more and more of this every year, and one of these years I'm actually going to do something about it, is that we need to work on this vendor base and vendor development and that sort of stuff. So anyway,
you know what, you're only targeting a small number of people. said a couple of hundred, I don't know what the actual number is, but it must be something around that. And, you know, that's a relatively small amount of people. I would encourage vendors to find out who those people are, and not bombard them with phone calls, but use direct marketing tactics to.
No, and yeah, I'm just kind of reiterating what Edward's saying, because you know, I tell people, even crew, I tell crew this, you know, who's going to hire you? You know, that executive producer is not going to hire you. You know, I mean, especially when you're starting off in the crew world. So if I was doing that, I'd say every 2 or 3 months I'd be resending my resume. Don't forget about me. It's like vendors. Every 3 or 4, hey, we've changed our website. Come up with some reason to reconnect. You know, we're now carrying this thing. You know, we've expanded into this thing. And I you know, to me, I think you address it based on some of those categories, how you divide up your vendors. You know, when you have you start with a meeting with those buyers. Get them on board, and then discuss what's missing in that regards. But then maybe, you know, you go into the economic development world and you say, hey, how do we, we've done this a couple times, we've done a couple events, we're saying, hey, have you ever thought about film for your business, expanding or, you know, creating a new niche? We actually, for one event, we created a little list of how to, you know, what it is to be a vendor in this business, which is also on our website. So, you know, so I think you address those 4 different categories in 4 different ways, but I know that directory for me in my position is how I do it. There's a different conversation for me to understand what's going on in the business, but in regards to the customer service to productions and to our local community, because we have both, you know, it's here's what people have listed, you know, here are the people that I know of that you need to contact, but I think knowing, like having a filtered out list of knowing who truly are the buyers, then you know where to start and ask the questions and say, hey, can I change my business model? And then you come back and you can talk to me about incentives, or you can talk to your local community about, you know, how does this work in the community, and how do I get the, you know, bricks and mortar and be involved? Or maybe it is a association of sponsors and an association that people want to be involved with, because it's another cross-reference to show your intention and your legitimacy of working with the industry. Because all of this is like relationship, it's all cross-referencing. Because you never know what's going to change. You never know, you know, if, you know, all of a sudden you are rebatable or sometimes and then you're not. You know, we can't make those decisions. We can only say, hey, this is the business you're in, you met this criteria, that's about the incentive. But like John's saying, it's a bigger picture, and there's more than one reason to have your business. And if you're looking for sustainability, how do you you know, look at all different ways you can be involved for, you know, when it's only Westerns happening and you have poodle skirts, you know. That's kind of how you have to think of it.
I just wanted, as a department head, to make the pitch for it. I know that there's nobody in this room that are businesses that I deal with, but Edward, I think you would echo this, you know, weekends and after hours, if there's some way to communicate with you, that's huge. I'm just in my department finding a mechanic or a tire guy that works on the weekend in Santa Fe or Albuquerque. Holy jamoly! I mean, it's really, they're you know, they're not. But when I'm ordering in my other department, water, I can text the water guy at 6, because, and again, one of the things that the incentives have done means there's a lot more TV here than there used to be, and TV always works overnight on Friday night. So I can, at 6 o'clock on Saturday morning when I'm getting ready to go to bed, I can text the water guy. I know I'm not going to wake him up, I know I'm not going to bother him, I can go to bed, and you know, because sometimes we don't know until the work weekends what's going to happen or where we're going to be or where we're going to need a delivery. So again, businesses that can come out and come deliver, and that don't mind if you do that at 6 o'clock in the morning on Saturday when you're getting ready to go to bed, and then they'll, you know, when they get up for that they're willing to take a call on the weekend. That's really huge, and it's not for everybody. I certainly respect you guys. You know, I certainly respect people who can get through life, you know, taking a weekend. It's a much better life, but
Well, I can't remember where we were, it was outside of Santa Fe, but there was a production looking at some hotels for the crew, and there were 2 hotels beside each other, and one just said, no, we're not doing that. We don't want to do that. And then the other hotel was like, I have a great film white person, and I'm going to change the restaurant hours for the crew working a different shift so they can come in because they know
that's how
they're...
Victoria is, I mean, that's why,
Absolutely.
you know, that's why the business works with Victoria, because we can call her on her cell phone, you know.
She's the point person at that hotel to say, oh yeah, I get it, you know, and it can be a really strange ask, especially in hotels. You get some strange asks from production. Maybe the writers from the talent, or just the weird schedule, or whatever it is. So, you know, there's businesses that say, this is as far as I will go for that, but if it's something where you need something Saturday and someone says, you reach someone and their normal response is, oh, I can get that by Tuesday, that's not gonna work. And that happened where a production was up north somewhere and they needed propane, I think it was propane.
It's propane's a big deal.
Propane's a big deal, so there's I believe, and this is just me getting feedback, there's a propane company that'll travel wherever, a couple hours, and if someone in the local community and liaisons get this question, well, why aren't they using the propane guy that's right there on the street, down the street? Well, they couldn't do it until next week. The guy I'm just saying, but could do it the next day. So we have to deal with those optics. Because it's not that they're avoiding that local vendor. The vendor couldn't meet that time. So time is, we're probably being redundant with time, but time we keep emphasizing. So.
I have a question. Does a list like you're mentioning, does that exist where companies who we know what we can offer, we know what we can give you, but we need to find out who those buyers are and how can we expand into that and get that word out there?
It's not what I'm calling a filtered out list. Sometimes I'll talk to someone in our office, or at least I'm sure you do this too, where we say, hey, I recommend, emailing this group of people from our website. Sort of like I was saying with the POC, when someone says, I'm a massage therapist. I had a tarot card reader. I was like, you never know what the producers, extended family coming in want to do. Have that list ready, right? So email them and they'll at least know where to put that in that kind of box of last minute vendors that I never know when I'll need them. So right now, and I think that was kind of the discussion with John, is that and as Edward said, is like that would be great to filter out those buyers to make it easier to connect those dots. But right now we're kind of assisting really case by case.
So initially we just need to submit that information to the film office as a vendor on the directory. And
Correct.
That's where we start.
And going back to that, I'm sorry, on that website, how do you feel, you said it was on the bottom of the page and I'm for some reason not finding it, when you want to list as a vendor.
It's the industry directory under public interest. There's
Okay, got it, okay.
and then it'll say, I think, either update your listing to the right, if you scroll to the bottom, it's create a listing, and it's broken into crew services and vendor services.
Okay.
And there's other means to do that direct marketing, whether it's, there's a lot of film Facebook pages, as you mentioned. And getting that link, like what I like to see is that there's always some place so you can navigate back to that place. I mean, right now in the world of web, we're inundated with information, and to get back to where you need to be is sometimes hard. So if you have that link, it goes to your website, on our website, on a Facebook page. You send that link to your buyer. It's all going to that same place where it's easy to navigate. And so that's usually what I recommend when you're trying to get your name out there and saying, hey, we'll do this. We're film friendly. That's usually like a catchphrase people like to use. We're film friendly. People call me, I'm like, I know about 10 film friendly hotels, or they give film rates and things like that. So you want to use that. You want to pass on very quickly that you have some sense that it's not the average client, I guess.
But for art specifically,
That would be the.
you can go also on the state's webpage and
You can
access the set decorators that are listed on there, and there's probably an email to contact her.
And John, I don't know if you get those calls either, but sometimes you can call the union and say, who can I send my info to? Does your office do that?
Sure, we try to do it
We try to do everything electronically these days. I mean, it's just because we have a record of it. Part of it is under the Breaking Bad bill, there's a more objective criteria on whether somebody was available or not. It's gonna, again, I'm not getting in the weeds of the Breaking Bad bill, but we now keep electronic records, and the best way to get hold of us under any circumstances is to send us an email, because it's actually, our main email is answered by a number of different people. It then goes to the right person. It's just a lesson for anybody in the movie business that, you know, telephones are going obsolete in our business. Everybody likes to have that record, that text to a certain extent if it's urgent, but in general, because we all use smartphones these days. In fact, see, Annie, my assistant's just got just sent me a reminder, reminding me it's Pearl Harbor Day. So since we have some vets here, we'll talk about that a little later on. But everything is electronic. I'm getting my emails on the phone. If you don't have a smartphone in our business, you're probably not making buying decisions. You know, the people are making buying decisions with smartphones, so therefore they're getting that information. So if somebody sent me an email saying, "Hey, how do I talk to them?" I would send it over to Rachel, who sits at the front desk, who manipulates our database, and then she would send out, you know, the kind of generic information, which is normally just the department, the name, and the email address. We don't give our phone numbers or anything else, but that's how we would do it. I would love to see the State Film Office website is pretty user-friendly in there, but I'd love to see the state have an app that would help. You know, I think that's something that we have a department of IT. Don't you still have a cabinet secretary of IT? So.
You're getting into a whole other conversation here. Just saying.
I think the state should have an app.
Well, you know, it's actually, but you know, it's you know, I've had I've learned a lot about two things recently in my career, and one is about taxes, and one is about IT and responsive software, which is more important to me than apps at this point. But you know, I kind of what I was alluding to earlier is I think, you know, we've gone through these phases where, and you have so much information. You know, our website is jam-packed with information, and we spend time helping people navigate through a website, which is kind of what you want to avoid to some degree. You want it to be, you know, I think the new trend is like, here's the front page, and this is where I am, and let it take me to the information I need. And I know that's the kind of thing I'm hoping that we can improve. So like when you have, like, I'm a vendor, you click on a vendor and you can go to these lists that have been filtered out, because it's difficult when there's so much information that say, okay, this applies to me, this doesn't apply to me, this applies to me. So you know, that's something I'm always pushing for, because I think you're right, kind of, and coming back to what you're saying, is that everything has got to be electronic, and it has to be succinct, and you have to be able to find it. I find myself printing those emails. I'm like, okay, I gotta remember that person, and that's that. I have my own kind of version of that problem-solving box, because there's just so many emails we get. There's so much information that it really, as much as FaceTime becomes a part of that, but that's, to me, it's a little later.
Yeah, I'm saying it's a part of building relationships with these people, with buyers. You know, first an email, maybe a call once every 6 months or something. You know, not like every second minute, because you're building a relationship. It's like anything else. You know, you don't want to annoy your customer, but you know, and also networking. You know, just knowing, just coming to things like this, meeting people, and you'll get to know the next person. Or you know, someone like me could lead you on to someone else who knows someone else. You know. It's a long thing. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about this, where we are at the moment in the business. I had, it's just a little anecdote, but I had this strange thing happen to me a couple of weeks ago, where we got to a vendor we'd rented some things from. We got to the end of the rental period, and we decided that we wanted to extend the rental period for various reasons. So I went back to the vendor and said, can we extend it? What would the price be? We extended it for several more weeks. And the vendor came back to me and almost doubled the price of that thing. And I was shocked. I was like, wow, really? How is that? How? Really? I was totally blown away. And the answer came back. I thought it was a mistake. And they came back to me and said, well, no, it's not a mistake. We've just got so many other productions and we just think we can get that. So you're on your own. So I don't recommend that as a business thing, but it does speak to a little bit about where we are in terms of how much business is going on. So there we are. We didn't pay, but it is interesting that is perceived to be a tactic because it's so busy.
Just again about mediation, to be clear about it, I like Mr. Hendry's statement because really if you are building relationships, mediation is a great tool because it allows that relationship to continue. People always have disputes. You know, if you say you never had a dispute, you're probably not being honest. And it's really how you resolve it. And it allows the relationship to continue because you both get it, that it's in your interest to come to a resolution. It's also a lot quicker. You can sit down in an hour or two, come to a resolution. So, you know, if the business operates really quickly, mediation fits right into that model because it's a very quick process that can resolve it. And if you're both thinking, you know, we're at a stone wall, let somebody else do it. Mediators also often, like I do arbitration, where you give me the power to resolve the dispute. And in mediation, it's the two parties coming to a resolution with me as the neutral, helping them go forward to get to that point. So there's a couple of different processes that can be used that, again, are more cost-effective, more timely, and help maintain relationships.
You know, part of my job also is renegotiation. Is that things change all the time in our industry. People decide they want things and then decide they don't. You know, and that happens very, very frequently. And you know, maintaining a relationship through the changes of business is an important part of what my is a part of my job to do that.
Victoria, did you have a question earlier? Or
No, I think that's it.
does anyone else have questions? Anything else to ask?
I have one other thing. You know what I think might be something that might be useful one day is a comprehensive guide for vendors to know who to contact, because I know who to contact, but I've been working in the industry for 8 or 9 years. But for someone that's trying to break in, they might not know the department head or the people, and so maybe if there was like just an easy comprehensive guide to doing business in the industry and who like a makeup vendor or a makeup product person would sell to, which of course is hair and makeup, but you know, people might not know that, so maybe there's something that can actually be.
Right, and I think that's what we're hoping to do with the buyers list, to be able to connect the category with those buyers. And I think it's a great idea that's come out of today, because I do think it helps with, rather than necessarily go from the vendor's paradigm.
And to expand on that too, like for people who are newer in the industry, like to get, like to set up their kit, like if I want to buy a steamer or a serger or like a sewing machine, like who are the good people to go to purchase that for my own personal kit. So
That's a good point, because kids are very important to a lot of
Yeah.
vendors. That's a great point.
I just want to make a comment. I'm going to speak up for the vanities. Because it is true that a lot of times we do end up bringing stuff in from LA or other suppliers, because it's just a matter of the supplies that they have on hand and stuff like that. And usually when I've done classes, we always do a list of local suppliers and vendors and all of that. But also, there is a vendor here in Santa Fe, and we had actually spoken to the vendor about carrying more supplies so that we could purchase local. I know a lot of makeup and hair vanities, wardrobe do try and purchase local and support their local businesses. The information, the response we got was that this person just wasn't interested in working that hard to keeping all those supplies. Now, this has been about 1.5 years ago, so you know, maybe I need to go in and revisit it, as you were talking, John, about a business development type of thing, and so.
That's great. great point, and I think that revisiting is always helpful,
Right.
you know, because I don't know, and even yesterday, I was like, I thought Thanksgiving was a month ago. And, you know, I have no idea, and I don't even work on productions, I can't keep it straight. And then I always tell people, you know, like, just every few months, remind people you exist or what you're doing, and part of what, you know, we've been talking about in that kind of direct marketing as a part of the package of how you get involved. But feel free to use, you know, the state office as a resource, Lisa as a city film liaison. I'm gonna throw Kate in that mix over there, Kate Noble from the Economic Development Department of the city. And so, you know, we can, as we develop maybe some of these resources, as we've had this conversation, at least you can get going with what your immediate needs are.